the 27th of Nisan was established by the Israeli government, the Knesset, as Yom HaShoah Umeret HaGetaot, the day commemorating the Holocaust, specifically related to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was that date that was established by the State of Israel as a day to mourn those who were lost in the unimaginable tragedy of the 1940s, of the Holocaust, as well as to note the Gvura, the strength of those who rose up during in the Warsaw Ghetto with one final stand against the Nazis and against Nazism. Of course, that uprising failed, but the State of Israel wanted to commemorate and honor those who gave their lives al Kiddush Hashem, both those who were murdered by the Nazis, but also those who were died in fighting against those Nazis. And the idea of a day of commemorating the Shoah, but also the Gevurah, is one that continues to reverberate all these decades later after the end of the Holocaust. What is the Gevurah that we commemorate, that we observe, that we note, that we learn from? What is it? What is the strength? What is the bravery that we note among those who experienced the Holocaust? Some look at the bravery and the valiant efforts of those who fought against the Nazis, the partisans, the uprisings, those who try to sabotage the Nazi machinery of warfare. Others look to spiritual bravery, a Seder in Auschwitz, or fasting in the camps, or a makeshift sukkah in one of the slave labor camps. These expressions of spiritual bravery are also worth noting and commendable and something to learn from. The Kiddush Hashem that's created, finding God even in the most darkest of places. But there's another type of gvura, there's another type of bravery, another type of what it means to commemorate Yom HaShoah v'Gvura, and I believe that is resilience. Those who survived the Holocaust, to go on to live productive lives, to go on and live Jewish lives, full of Jewish identity, lives that transmitted Jewish tradition to the next generation. We are fortunate that our commemoration of Yom HaShoah v'Gvura this year includes the redistribution of memoirs, of testimonials of survivors, both members of our community as well as relatives, loved ones of members. They too represent Gevurah. They too are Giborim. They are those that left behind the horrors of Europe and came and rebuilt a life that was strong in Jewish identity and disseminating, transmitting values onto the next generation. These Giborim, these testimonials of Holocaust survivors that are connected with our Young Israel of Hollywood community are part of our history, a part of our story. May they be a source of strength and inspiration, of knowledge and resilience for us as well, not only their families and their loved ones, but our entire Young Israel of Hollywood community and Klal Yisrael.
Hi, my name is Kobi Berkson, and I will be introducing my grandfather, Joe RUBENFELD, who was a long-standing member of Young Israel and was really an amazing, special man that affected so many lives in our community. My grandfather unfortunately lost his brother, sister, mother, and father. He was the only survivor in his nuclear family, and when he came to America, he built himself an amazing life, and his positivity, although he went through various negative things, was an inspiration to everyone around him and his family. And it's my pleasure and honor to introduce the video, some brief clips of him with documenting his Holocaust experience. So here's a few minutes. Thanks.
was just before the Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks later, the Russians moved in.
So this was in what year?
This was in 1939, to the best of my, 1939.
Okay, so let's talk about how the war started then. If the Germans came in first, what happened?
Well, if you want to go into details, I remember when the Germans walked in, and I was a kid, and they walked in with such a might and such power. And we were just watching as kids, didn't know, seeing the soldiers pass by. And this was going on for a few days. And I think about a couple of weeks later, the Jewish holiday started, which is Rosh Hashanah, and that's when it was the first where they started to persecute, cut beards, pull on beards. And I remember there's one particular man who was beaten up pretty badly. And we were praying, and not in the synagogue, we were hiding. And this is where the first time it started. So, but of course they didn't stay too long at that time. They stayed just about 3 or 4 weeks. Then the Russians came in. A lot of things have changed.
So were you going to school then at that time?
No, not at all.
What were you doing then at that time?
Nothing.
Staying home?
Just staying home, keeping away, keeping out. I mean, indoors as much as we could.
And how about your mother and your sister and brother? They were all staying home?
They were all staying home.
What other kind of rules do you remember that were put into effect?
Well, they pretty much, we were not allowed to move around from town to town or from village to village, or at night we were not allowed to go in. And if I recall, it was every day or every week was another rule where they have put you into different restrictions. But you see, where I was, it was a village, and there was a total of 58 Jewish families. So it was a very small town, and again, I recall since my father was very Orthodox, but was a modern Jew, and I imagine it had a lot to do with the business that he had. He was clean-shaven, etc., and more, and so I imagine that he was not as outstanding as the others, the majority who were in Poland. The majority of the Jews wore the robes and the payas and the beards, etc., etc. So maybe in some way we were sheltered to some way, etc.
Did the Polish government attempt to protect its Jews?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They have, if I would say, I think that they got some kind of a satisfaction out of it. And then I shouldn't say that because I was too young. The Polish government, I don't know, what would you say at that time, the Polish government? Who was the Polish government?
Now I'd like to ask you about the ghetto years. How did you learn that you'd have to be living in a ghetto? Do you remember?
Well, I never lived in a ghetto. So let's start. What happened is that we were notified that tomorrow we have to report to Przemysl. And we should pack our belongings and move by foot.
You saw the small children, somebody said shoot them. Did you have any weapons? Did anybody have any
No, he didn't say shoot him, he said kill him.
Okay.
There are many ways different, so they wanted to kill him because they were afraid they would go over, and sure enough, they did. Well, we were very easy to detect. They see people with blue and white striped uniforms. So they took us down to a basement, and they told us that they're calling the Gestapo, and they'll come in to get us in the morning. And believe it or not, there were some German women who were crying. And they brought us down food. And everybody's walking in this basement, crying, carrying on. They said, tomorrow we're going to die. I found a piece of cloth, woolen cloth, and I had a needle and thread. So I sat down in the corner, I tried, and I started to sew mittens for myself. And they were all going around telling me, what are you doing? He said, how can you do that? I said, I'm sewing mittens. He says, tomorrow you're going to die. So my answer to them was, just in case if I'm going to live, I'll have mittens. I'm bringing that up. I imagine that this is part of my entire survival, the way I looked at it. Every day, thank God, I'm alive. So what happened the next morning? The Gestapo came in, and they loaded us on trucks, and a lot of German women were crying to leave us alone. So they took us a few miles out just in a big field facing the forest, and they told us to run. And they set up machine guns, and I felt I got hit right here in the arm, and I thought I felt it, and I just fell down. And I was laying over there until it got dark. And then I went into the forest, and I was walking there for quite a few days. Now, what happened to the other 22? I cannot answer. Number one, I did not know many of them, because once we went to Blechhammer, when they put us together, then when we came out of there, they pushed us together, that not the same people were walking. So whether they all died, whether someone survived, it's very difficult, because I could not even, we spent together actually like 24 hours. So I don't know what, I'm the only one who survived. There was somebody else who did the same thing that I did. Whatever I've told you a story with some incidents, but I really feel that it's impossible to describe what really has happened during those 4 years. That myself today, sometimes I wonder, but if this is that I've really gone through that. So telling to people who have not experienced that, I don't think it's impossible for them to imagine, even seeing all those pictures, that really happened. I just hope to God that this will never happen again. There were times where I completely lost faith in the Almighty. But where is He? Is there? How could it happen today? But I imagine that God has mysterious ways about doing things.
Hello, my name is Edward Zinn. My mother, Doris Zinn, was taken to Auschwitz in May of 1944 as part of the Hungarian transport. Her parents and 3 siblings died there. She, her sister Charlotte, and 2 brothers survived. The video clip presented is but a small edited portion of more than 2 hours of video testimonial taken in 2005. The video selected is her account of her family's roundup and transport to Auschwitz.
In 1944, we celebrate Pesach. My father didn't want to eat anymore because he said he don't know if his sons have anything to eat. So we celebrate Pesach, and when Pesach went out, the night we used to wash up the dishes, put it away. We washed it up, but didn't put it away. In the morning, there was a loudspeaker on the corner. My father said, "Why go listen what they say?" So I went, and I came back crying. He said, "Well, if you cry, then it must be very bad." And then I told them, they said, every Jew should be at 9 o'clock on the street with a little package what you can carry in the hand and leave everything. So we packed up, my father cried, the grandchildren were little, he held them the hand. So we went out on the street and we stayed there till night. No water, no food. My mother was sick already because she got a little stroke before. My father was sick from the heartache. And we stayed there at 9 o'clock. They put us in a boxcar by the station because Batya was like a railroad station. All the trains must go through. It was a very rich little place because all the Goyim was railroad workers. And they took us to Munkac, to a brick factory. The brick factory just had a roof and mud in the bottom. So we went through from the station, and we went down in Munkac from the station. We went through the city. 5 of them, we have to be 5 in a line. My father went one side a 7-year-old, one side a 3-year-old little grandson. And when he walked, a woman saw it from the window. They were still home then in Munkac. So she collapsed and died. She couldn't bear it, you know, an old man going with 2 little children. Yeah, we went to that was the ghetto. We have to go get straw if you want to sleep, you know. I start to go for straw. When I pull it out, somebody else took it, and I was like ready to cry. So finally I took a little for my mother and father, and we sit down next to their feet. And there we was 4 weeks. They give us some soup, you know, not really good food, but soup and a piece of bread. And we was waiting. We thought maybe some gonna happen, somebody gonna come, but after this was April 5th and on May 5th, everybody have to get up, they said, and line up and start to go to the boxcars. They bought in the boxcars to take us to Auschwitz. They took my father earlier because they said he was lighting for the Russian. When I went to say goodbye to him, I hugged him, and the soldier came and hit my head and chased me away. My father saw me, I was his everything. He saw the soldier hit me, he started to cry. And the last time I saw him crying, that was it. Still cry when I remember, because never have seen back home. My father cried when he saw hitting me. Then I went back to the ghetto and they took away my father. And next day they put us in a boxcar and we traveled 2 days. 2 days all the way in Slovenia, all over. They took us to Poland. The weather was May, beautiful. all over flowers, green, and we was locked up in a boxcar without food, without water. And the guy told us, the conductor, he said, try to run away because they take you to kill. So we didn't want to believe it. But when we came down, before we went to Auschwitz, they took us away, they put 2 buckets of each side of the door in the lager and said whoever walked through should throw in the jewelry and the money. If we're not going to throw it in, they killed the head of the family. So everybody was afraid we throw in the jewelry, throw in the money. Some people throw in money in the hem, in the clothes. We didn't. So we went through, and after 2 days we came to Auschwitz. But we saw that money was like leaves in the fall, standing. Money I saw over there, my neighbor, she had Parkinson's disease, a lady. She was laying on the side on a stretcher. And then they started to sort us out. My mother was weak. I told my neighbor, watch my mother. So she said, yeah, I'm going to watch her, and she collapsed. So I went and held my mother, and Mengele came and tore out my hand and pushed me on the other side. And he said, Ungarische sind alles schön. The Ungarisch are all nice, he said. Because we was dressed up, we was young. And then we went from there, they take us to take a shower, and they give us like a long gray dress, and they start to shave up our hair. They shaved up my hair, and Charlotte was next to me. I started to holler, where she? I didn't recognize her without the hair. And then they put us in a barrack where was on a small place like this. It was 14 of us have to sleep, like the sardine. Feet and leg. If you want to turn, they all turned. And that's how it went. Then they say they come. I had their cousin who was there already till 1940. She said, if they call you to work, right away go. If not, they're going to kill you. So they came in the morning and said, who want to work? So we right away, raised our hand and run. And then it was about 1,000 of us. They tattooed us. Gave the tattoo, this.
Once you volunteered?
They put us on our hand.
Show me the tattoo for a second. If you can. I know your arm is hurt, but let me, posterity's sake. Now it's hard to read this. What does it say? What are the numbers?
69, 68, 29.
Is there an A first?
A 68, 29.
Because over the years it has lost its.
Some of them took it out. I didn't took it.
Yeah, hold it there for a second. So I want to have this because I really want to show this. A 6829.
I think so.
It's hard to tell. You would know.
Yeah, 68. And Charlotte was 69.
Good evening. My mother was a survivor. She had a very beautiful childhood and young adulthood until the Nazis, with the willing assistance of the Hungarian militia, invaded their sweet town of Munkacs in 1944, shortly after Pesach. This changed her life forever. What you are about to see are 3 brief segments of her 90-minute interview with the Shoah program. The first segment, Life Before. The second describes the transport to Auschwitz. And the third, my mother, always the realistic optimist, with her message to me, which I am willing to share tonight. I hope you find her messages meaningful. Thank you.
Today is June 27th, 2001. I'm conducting an interview with Edith Roth, R-O-T-H, maiden name Berman, B-E-R-M-A-N. I'm Susan Rosenblum, R-O-S-E-N-B-L-U-M. We're in West Palm Beach, Florida, the United States of America, and the language is English. What's your name, please?
Edith Roth.
And what was your maiden name?
Berman,
Where were you born?
Czechoslovakia.
And the town?
Munkac,
And when were you born?
1924.
And how old are you now?
76.
Thank you. What was your father's name?
Solomon.
And your mother?
Hava.
And what was her maiden name?
Mummelstein.
What did your father do?
He was a businessman. He had with fruit and candies. We had a store, wholesale, retail.
And did you have sisters and brothers?
Yes,
And their names?
their names. My oldest brother was Chaim Wolf, then Eliyahu, then Goldie, Feige, Edith, Shulam Hersh, Avram Leib, Shmuel, Suri, Bell, Meyer, Sroyanko, and that's it.
So there were how many of you all together?
12.
What did your home look like?
Warm. Heimlich. It was lively, nice. We had a nice relationship, the whole family. We were happy, no worries. We were kids. We had a happy childhood. He marched us to the wagons.
How far away was it?
It was a walking distance, not far. It wasn't far to walk. I don't remember walking far. And they said we are going to work there. So they gathered us. We were 45, 50 in a wagon.
And what kind of wagon was it?
Like these animals, like the ship animals. No windows, a little window with wiring. No food, no water. We stopped, and somebody from the Hungarian public, they gave us water. They were allowed to give us water, and that's it. We couldn't sit straight. We was sleeping, sitting up. And the toilet was there with a blanket. We surrounded everybody. It was horrible. It was horrible.
How long were you on the train?
Overnight. We left in the afternoon and we arrived in Auschwitz the following evening. It was dark when we arrived.
And the train stopped at Auschwitz, and the doors were opened up.
Yeah, and it went so fast, you didn't give you time to think. Everybody, mach schnell, mach schnell.
What was the first thing you saw?
Soldiers with dogs. And then they grabbed us, they lined us up, and the Polish boys were there already. And they grabbed us out. Young people, they grabbed us. I was with a line with my grandmother and with my little sister. And she held on to me because she was night blind. And a Jewish boy grabbed me away, you go on that side. And my grandmother said, why do you leave me alone? So I sent it to my mother, she should go there. And that's how I saw them, the last. They grabbed me away from the line. They grabbed me out from the line to the death camp.
What did you smell when you got there?
We smelled burning. It was burning. And we saw the fire, and it smelled like body smell. And my father said, they are burning, they are burning. No, they were burning.
Do you believe in God?
Yes, that kept us alive. Hope, God kept us alive.
Well, my next question actually is, when you look back upon everything that you experienced, why do you think that you survived?
I'm asking the same question. Why? I mean, my father was a righteous man. My grandfather was sitting and learning the whole day. Why me? That's how God wants it.
When you think back to everything that you experienced, being in the ghetto, being in the camps, going on a death march, what is your most painful memory?
To remain alone.
Do you often think about the Holocaust?
Oh, yeah. See, whenever we talk, I like to watch the movies too. I have nightmares. I can't sleep nights over it. Every day I think about it. It doesn't go out of my mind.
Why did you decide to give your testimony, to make this tape now?
The truth, I wanted something to leave for my kids.
This is my last question for you. If you could leave a message to your children and to your grandchildren, and a message that would eventually go to your great-grandchildren, in light of everything that you have experienced, what would that message be?
To believe in God. That's all. If you believe in God, then everything turns out well. That's my message. I hope and believe. If you give up hope, then it's no good, which happens to a lot of people. They just gave up. And we kept on talking between ourselves, not to give up, try to fight, try to fight. So just to believe. Believe keeps us alive, kept us alive. And that's, you have to believe in God.
Thank you very much.
My mother, Miriam MITZNER, was born in a small town in Poland, Józefów. She was the second oldest of four sisters, four daughters, her mother and her father. Her mother and her sisters survived, her father did not. When the Germans came into Poland and they saw things were really bad, my mother's uncle and cousin came in the middle of the night and brought a horse-drawn wagon to my mother, her sisters, and my grandmother, and told them they needed to leave. My grandfather unfortunately said that he was just going to stay to just put loose ends together, and he joined them the next day, which that did not happen. They were taken on this horse-drawn wagon in the middle of the night, and then a makeshift raft to go as far away as they could from Poland. And unfortunately, on the other side were the Russians waiting for them. At that time, they captured them and sent them to Siberia, to the labor war camps. Before they did that, they asked them, do you want to stay here with the Polish and the Germans, and they will take you and they will kill you, or do you want to go with us? And we'll make you work, but we won't kill you. And that was the Russians. So they decided to go to the Russians, with the Russians to Siberia. My mother, her sisters, and her mother worked in a sugar factory it was actually a brick-making factory. They received one ration of sugar a day and traded that in for food. Winters were harsh, and my mother did contract typhus, as did her sisters and her mother. Thank goodness they survived. She never did see her father again. Eventually, they were told they were free to go, but they had no place to go. They didn't know where they were. Eventually, they were taken to a DP camp in Germany called Bad Reichenhall, where my brother was born. 2 years later, they gained passage to America, where my father's oldest sister lived, and she signed the papers for him and his family, and they came to America. And you'll hear my mother, in her own words, tell her story.
My name is MIRIAM. I was born October the 10th, 27. I was living in Poland, Yusufov. All life was not so great. It was, you know, we had a small town. It has no light, no water, no nothing. I have 4 siblings. My father was a peddler. It was a school, you know, girls and boys, not Jewish. No, it was not a Jewish school. It was mixed. Jewish and Polish. It was the same class, same teacher. That's why we played, was my friend. We heard of the radio. Germany coming. We didn't know nothing, and all of a sudden, the German came in. Bullets were flying over our heads because we went to hide in a hill because we were afraid. I know the German come in. And then they start shooting. In the town, half a town was burning already. We was afraid. We went to the hills. We was laid down. My father, my mother, my 3 sisters. They laid down, and then they start shooting. We stand up. We went back in the house. They came in. The German came into the house. They look around. And then they take my father, they cut his bear. And they take my father to work to clean toilets. My aunt and my cousin hire a man with horses, with a wagon a bit, and they come middle of the night to us, say, come on, take the kids. To my mother, take the kids, and we're gonna go. And my father said he's gonna be there with my uncle, and he's gonna come another day. He wanna come to us. The border was closed. He couldn't come to us, and they killed him, my father there. Friday night, knocking on the door. My mother was afraid. We was ever afraid. And come in soldiers with guns, big guns, and said, take it, come on. And they took us in the train. The train was a closed train, you know. It's not like a regular train. It was dark, like the horses go traveling. It was, and they pushed inside. Inside was very bad because we couldn't move. They pushed us in. We couldn't turn around, we couldn't sit down, nothing. And from there, they took us severe. that we didn't know where we were going. We came to Siberia, just had to go down, and we went over there. It took us, it was very cold, and it was, we didn't know what to do. That gave us not a room, like a bungalow, a small room with bunk beds and nothing, no mattress, just straw in the bottom, and we have to sleep like this. That's what's in Siberia. It was very, very cold. They gave us a big jacket and gave us balinkas, the boots. The boots is made from straw, boots. And they gave us gloves. And that's, well, over there it's so cold. When you go out, you can freeze. And give us a little water. Soup, they said it's soup. We was there about 2 years. And Siberia is the air over there. This is only people, bad people. If you go there, they told us, you're not going to go home. Over here, you can stay forever. They didn't treat us nothing, we didn't know nothing. We was in the room, they gave us a room, and they sent us to work and come back, and that's all. I was working in a field, cut grass, in the summer. Then they set me free. They took us to Kabul. We come to the Kabul for the station. They said out. We went out, we lay down at the floor by the station. We get typhus. We were sick, typhus. They took us to the hospital, one room. It was my mother, my sister, and everybody was laying there off the floor, a concrete floor. He was laying there, and was another about 4 people also in the room. It was about 8 people in the room. Food, we had no food, but we had nothing. I survived. It was a miracle. We didn't know how we survived, We struggled and struggled, and that's it. It was very, very hard. But thank God we was strong, and we took it. Why you have to give up? I have sisters, I have a mother. I have to fight.